In this video, we're going to talk about the psychology of color. Color is so important in design. Have you ever noticed how many restaurants use red in their logos, or how colors make you feel? As we read through this infographic below, think about your brand and which colors correspond to your brand's values. First, some quick numbers. 84.7% of consumers cite color as the primary reason they buy a particular product. When people buy, 93% look at visual appearance, 6% look at texture, and only 1% decide on sound and smell. 80% of people think color increases brand recognition. Have you ever seen that certain shade of green that instantly makes you think of Starbucks? That's a perfect example of color increasing brand recognition. 52% of shoppers did not return to a store due to overall aesthetics. Research reveals people make a subconscious judgment about an environment or product within 90 seconds of initial viewing, and between 62 and 90% of that assessment is based on color alone. Okay, so ads in color are read up to 42% more often, and color can improve comprehension, learning, and reading. So let's talk about how color works. There are whole classes and books written on color theory, but simply we have primary colors and secondary colors. Primary colors are colors that cannot be made by mixing other colors, while secondary colors are created by mixing other colors. For example, orange is made by mixing red and yellow, green is made by mixing blue and yellow, and purple is made by mixing red and blue. So let's talk about red. Red is a primary color, and it usually evokes some very strong emotions, and it encourages appetite. That's why it's used by restaurants to stimulate appetite. It increases passion and intensity, and it also increases heart rate. It can also create urgency, often seen in clearance cells. Now, here's an interesting little fact. When it comes to politics, around the world, it usually represents communist or socialist parties, while in the United States, it's used for Republicans. So that's something to think and to keep in mind if you are ever working in some type of political situation and you need to create branding for it. Who and where are you creating this branding for? If it's for the rest of the world, it's going to be seen completely different than if it's created for Republicans in the United States. And here are some companies that use red in their logos. And we have Coca-Cola, but think of all the companies, like I said, it stimulates appetite, right? So especially with fast food companies, McDonald's uses yellow also, but they also use red. KFC, Pizza Hut, Chick-fil-A, these are all fast food companies that use red. And it's also something that really sticks out. So if you're driving by, a red sign is going to make you look twice more often than another color. All right, so let's talk about yellow. Yellow increases cheerfulness and warmth, but it also causes fatigue and strain on the eyes. It can stimulate mental processes and the nervous system, and it encourages communication. It often represents optimism and youthfulness, and is used to grab attention of window shoppers. Some brands that use yellow, we have Best Buy, DHL, IMDb, McDonald's, National Geographic, Shell. And this is another color that really jumps out to you, especially with signs on the side of the road. All right, next let's talk about blue. So blue is often associated with water and peace. It's quote-unquote most preferred by men, represents calmness or serenity, and actually curbs appetite, which is an interesting little factoid. So if you're trying to be on a diet, is it better to sit in a blue room? It's known as a cold or cool color, and is perceived as constant because of the sky and the ocean being blue. It's also most used for offices. It's used in corporate and business because it's productive and non-invasive. Creates a sense of security and trust in a brand. And so here's another one of those flip-flops with politics. It usually represents conservative parties worldwide, but it's used for Democrats in the United States. Some companies that use blue is Facebook, Oral-B, Pepsi, Skype, and Walmart. All right, let's look at orange. Orange reflects excitement and enthusiasm. It shows warmth, but also warns of caution. It can signify aggression, but it can also create a call to action. Buy, sell, subscribe. And it's also used to get to impulsive shoppers. It can represent a friendly, cheerful, confident brand. Some companies that use orange: Amazon, Fanta, Harley-Davidson, Nickelodeon. All right, so let's look at green. Green constitutes health and tranquility and symbolizes money, usually denotes nature and alleviates depression. This is interesting that workers in a green environment have fewer stomach aches, and begs the question on why they're having stomach aches in the first place. Green represents new growth. It's used to relax in stores and associated with wealth. It has long been a symbol of fertility. And when it comes to politics, it is often connected to environmentalists. And here's some companies that use green. We have 7-Eleven, Starbucks that I talked about earlier. We have Xbox. Okay, let's move on to my favorite color, which is purple. Purple shows royalty, wealth, success, and wisdom. Many kings wore purple robes, but the reason this was because the color purple was hardest to create in nature from dyes and such. And so because it was hardest to create, not very many people could create it, and so it was more sought after. And if something's more sought after, then people with more wealth usually went for it. So it was exclusive and kings wore purple. It's used often in beauty or anti-aging products, and it's soothing and calming. It represents a creative, imaginative, wise brand. And like we talked about royalty for politics, it's used for royalty, but hardly used in modern politics. Some companies that use purple, we have Yahoo, Hallmark, Craigslist, Crown Royal, T-Mobile, Welch's. All right, so now that you have some insight into how color is perceived and used, take note of what colors correspond to your brand and use that or those colors in your projects. I highly encourage you to go back and review the chart the infographic that we just looked at, and really think of your brand and what the values are that are associated with the different colors. So next, let's talk about color trends. Who decides what color is in? Well, there's a company called Pantone that releases a color of the year, and they're usually on the forefront of predicting or creating color trends. So what is Pantone? Pantone is a company that came up with a color matching system across printers and technology. They started out in the 60s doing this, and they were really one of the first people who made it possible to pick a specific color and create a system where no matter who was printing for you, you can pick that color. So, for example, when we think of Coca-Cola, we think of red. But in reality, it is a specific red that is used, whether their logo is printed on a can, billboard, or on the web. So if you work in programs such as Photoshop or Illustrator, you can actually go to your color swatches panel and switch to Pantone swatches to dial in the exact color of your brand. This is especially helpful if you start working with commercial printers, because they're going to know which Pantone color you're talking about and can dial that in when you tell them. So every year, Pantone releases their color of the year. And you might not have realized it, but this designation is taken up by companies and can result in huge trends. Once you start knowing about Pantone's color of the year, you're going to find yourself noticing the color changes each year in different products. So current events often help to decide what color will be used. All right, so here's the Pantone color of the year for 2020 and why. 2020 is classic blue, and the Pantone color is this number right here, 19-4052. Every single color in the Pantone library has a numerical value like this. All right, so the executive director of the Pantone Color Institute says, we are living in a time that requires trust and faith. It is this kind of constancy and confidence that is represented, I think is what they meant, by Pantone 19-4052 Classic Blue, a solid and dependable blue hue we can always rely on. Imbued with a deep resonance, Classic Blue provides an anchoring foundation, a boundless blue evocative of the vast and infinite evening sky. Classic Blue encourages us to look beyond the obvious to expand our thinking, challenging us to think more deeply, increase our perspective, and open the flow of communication. Even though we did not realize the impact of the pandemic when this color was picked, which was late December 2019, I think personally it's really interesting because blues are calming. We may need a calming blue during this time, but this is a year where I haven't seen a strong presence of the Pantone color of the year. And I'm wondering if I'm feeling that way because I'm not going out to stores as often and not maybe people aren't creating as many products right now because shopping is down so much. All right, so pause this video and read this article. What is the Pantone color of the year and why is it important? After reading the above article, think about the different colors and how they've influenced your life. Did you or someone you know buy an ultraviolet blanket or throw pillow in 2018? I know I did, but to be fair, that's also my favorite color. So, did you or someone you know want to paint an accent wall bright green in 2017? I also remember around this time with interior design, all white or light gray everything with accent plants became big, and I wonder how much that has to do with that bright green color coming into play in 2017. All right, and then did you or someone you know dye their hair light blue or pink in 2016? This was huge. I remember everyone was doing it, and they're still doing it. These trends don't end at the end of the year. They usually continue for a couple. So speaking of the 2016 color combo, this was the first time two colors were chosen. 2016 was Rose Quartz and Serenity. And this was also actually a time when Pantone was way late on recognizing a huge trend, which is the ungendering of pink. From millennial pink to rose gold, this color has dominated in one way or another for the last 20 years. Pause this video and read this article on why millennial pink refuses to go away. So after reading this article, this kind of shows you that even the experts can get it wrong, and sometimes larger societal changes can change what is appealing to the public. So, as you can see, color is a huge factor in design. Finding colors that represent your brand can speak about your values. Keeping up to date with the newest color trends can keep your brand relevant and looking fresh. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to change your logo every year to a different color, but maybe the backsplash of your website or the graphics you're creating for social media starts using that Pantone color of the year instead. And also, sometimes the experts don't pick up on trends until later, so don't be afraid to do something different or to notice trends on your own. That's completely fine, and heck, that's what would make you an innovator.